the best coaches in the game. We really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmet's casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Take your tech. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Welcome back, DFS Army. This is FantasyFling taking another look at the Yahoo DFS slate. Did a little poll, and most people wanted to see the 6-game main slate on Yahoo, so that's what we are looking at this week, the wild card round. Let's go. All right, so a couple things when we look at this 6-game slate that I want to kind of address first. First off, when we are looking at cash games, when there's like 10 to as many as 13 games, it's much easier to cash, of course, when there's so many more options. When there's 6 games, 3 games, whatever, maybe specifically 6 games what we're looking at, obviously from 10 to 12 games, the player pool is going to be condensed. So it's going to be, it will be more difficult to cash because most of the field will be on the same plays. So when you have like a pay up of like Christian McCaffrey or Justin Jefferson, but they're both chalk, but really high chalk, that decision can really be the difference between you cashing or not. So my thought process is in general strategy is I'm going to go less cash and more tournaments, whether you do small tournaments, large field GPPs, that's up to you, but I would play less cash than I normally would. That said, in our cash game pool, we're going to look for some high 4 plays in superb matchups and, sprinkle in some fantasy points per dollar plays on a smaller slate on this slate. But that said, we, as far as our cash game pool, cash games players, they are also playable in tournaments, of course. So we're going to do a little different. We're going to start with the players that are liking cash, and then we're going to go to some tournament plays on how to get different. So first off, we're going to look at the game totals here. Now, a couple points I want to make as far as general strategy for this Yahoo slate is there are 6 games, and this does include a Monday slate. So there's a Monday night game, obviously, with Dallas and Tampa Bay. I do think no matter what your strategy is, I would probably have 1 or 2 lineups where I'm going to go heavy in the later games, not the early games, but the later games, so that I'll have several late swap options. As I think you would probably want to have at least a lineup or 2 where you can attack this Dallas and Tampa Bay game, because there is a lot of firepower on both sides. And this is the type of game you could potentially see it going back and forth. So just keep that in mind, is there are going to be several late swap options. So specifically, if you don't want a crazy sweat and you don't want to get, all your players in on Saturday on this slate, something to think about, just trying to spread exposures out so that you have exposures to some of these later games, specifically the Monday night game with Dallas and Tampa Bay. And so as far as the game totals, really there's just a couple that stand out. Obviously, you have the Chargers at Jacksonville. That's 47.5. New York Giants and Minnesota. We've seen this game go off before. They went on. They played in Week 17, scored over 50 points. Minnesota has just a bad defense, so any team can really score on them. And then, they have the firepower on offense to push the pace, to need to score a lot of points to win that game. So you've seen them in many shootouts this year. And the good thing is New York, they have cheap pass catchers. So a lot of stacking pieces that you like in that game. And then The third game for me, the game environment that I think could potentially shoot out, certainly play to the over, would be Dallas and Tampa, as I said. So those are the 3 games over 45. Very low game totals. We got some backups. We got Skylar Thompson. We got Tyler Huntley. Lamar Jackson's not expected to play. And then we have the Seahawks with a very low total going against a very good San Fran team. So this has kept the game totals pretty low. Obviously, these are teams you probably want to target and team stacks and whatnot in those games. The San Fran side, the Buffalo side and their game, and obviously the Cincinnati side. But you're probably not looking to get crazy and game stack those games. The game environments we do want to look at: Los Angeles Chargers, Jacksonville, New York Giants, Minnesota Vikings, and Dallas Cowboys. And, of course, the Tampa Bay Bucks. So that said, cash game quarterback and, really in all formats, Josh Allen. 2 games this year versus Miami, 31 points from Josh Allen. So definitely enough to be the nuts, even at his $40 salary on this small slate. Skylar Thompson, he is getting the start from Miami. So, when we first saw these 2 teams play, it looked like this might potentially be the AFC Championship. 2 really good teams, but Miami has, since they lost 6 games straight, they got Skylar Thompson starting. So I don't really like a whole lot on the Miami side in this game. I think you just kind of target it from, you're going to play Josh Allen and cash. He's certainly playable. And then in Josh Allen stacks in tournaments, looking more so for team stacks, definitely don't need to bring back Daniel Jones. So Minnesota, bad against the pass, giving up 3.65 points above average to the quarterback position and over 7 points above average to the wide receiver position. So, Allen, I do think you can get there in cash, but he is hard to get there in cash. That said, you got to be really strategic with your lineup. So I think Daniel Jones does come with a solid floor. And, he's in a great matchup in the highest projected game on the slate. So the $8 salary savings certainly help balance out your lineup, and Daniel Jones would be my other cash game quarterback. Now, running backs, Christian McCaffrey. He's a top running back play on the slate, and he's priced to the max. Seattle, it's just a dream matchup. They give up 6.15 points above average to the running back position. Christian McCaffrey, let's be honest, he's arguably the best back in the league. So solid cash game play. Great tournament play too, but there is risk in tournaments that if there's a scenario where he does not provide GPP winning value relative to his price, it's probably because he's splitting with Elijah Mitchell. Maybe Kyle Juszczyk, the fullback, gets a carry. These sort of things when you are priced that high. For example, he scored 22 points the last time he played against Seattle. That's probably not going to be enough to win. The Yahoo baller at his $41 price if he's not the highest scoring running back on the slate. If he gets outscored by Barkley, Eckler, ETN, then he's not going to win you a tournament. So that's something to keep in mind. There is the scenario where Elijah Mitchell, for example, vultures a touchdown. Specifically with them not needing to do a ton to beat Seattle, a little bit of a tournament risk for me because maybe, they're going to split up the workload a little bit. Now, Saquon Barkley, I do like him at his price, $31. Minnesota is just a bad defense across the board, and it sets up well for Barkley. He gets a lot of carries and receptions out of the backfield. The last time these 2 teams squared off, Barkley had 14 carries, 84 yards, and a touchdown, and 8 receptions for about 50 yards. So this game, highest projected on the slate, and, I really want a lot of exposure to it as possible. That said, in Barkley lineups, I'm not going to have Daniel Jones because they don't correlate well with one another. Specifically Jones, we saw Barkley being smash spots sometimes, like a couple weeks ago, week 17, and then Jones vultures a bunch of tutties. So we certainly don't want that. I would not play those 2 together. Now, but I do love Barkley and Travis Etienne. So Chargers, they are a run funnel. They give up above 3 points above average to the running back position. So Etienne, he gets a much softer matchup this week than he had last week. He did split a bit with Jermichael Hasty. That's a little concerning to me, is that'll happen from time to time, but this is a small slate and it is a good matchup, and it's his price for me really makes him playable. So value is hard to find, and it's hard to find a better matchup at this price. So he actually has the second highest rushing projection according to sensational power rankings, specifically Jacksonville. They have the second highest projection on the slate this week. So something you got to consider. And then on the slate, 6-game slate is really hard to find value. So a couple value guys for me, top fantasy points per dollar plays, you're going to need those available to you at running back and wide receiver. Leonard Fournette, $15, and Rachaad White at $13. I would prefer Rachaad White, specifically with him getting some receptions if it's a negative game script and just at a discount. But if you're trying to fit Josh Allen into your lineup, you're going to need a Rachaad White type for $13. Now, moving on to wide receivers. So Justin Jefferson, top play on the slate in this game environment with a 48-point game total. And, I think it could easily hit the over as it did last time. So when we did see Minnesota play New York last time, Jefferson had 16 targets, which is crazy. 12 receptions, 133 yards, and a touchdown. The Giants, this isn't a Jair Alexander, but they have a really good corner who they can provide safety help to as well. They don't have the type of corner to shut down Justin Jefferson. So assuming Kirk Cousins doesn't have a bad day, can get Justin Jefferson the ball, he's in the best spot really on the entire slate. So next, Jamar Chase. So he already went up against Baltimore last week, and they're not great against wide receiver. They give up 2 points above average. And last week he had 88 catches for 86 yards and a touchdown. And really, we know he's capable of a lot more. And in this scenario, they're probably keeping things close to the vest last week. They didn't go all out. He can certainly do a lot more. So he'll be in my tournament mix. Not going there in cash, but Chase is definitely playable in cash and in all formats. Now, a couple guys that I really like in cash, CeeDee Lamb, $27. He should be priced in the $30 range. So this is a decent matchup against Tampa. They have a better run defense than pass defense. So I do believe Dallas was likely to attack them more through the air. I love Lamb in cash games at this price. And then Keenan Allen. So this play just gets better and better because when I wrote this, we weren't entirely sure that Mike Williams was going to be out. I really thought he would play. But the Chargers pass offense, they project well this week. And Allen is averaging over 11 targets per game. His projection-wise, he is priced in the $30 range for projection-wise. Like, that's where he should be, but he's actually $26. So I love Keenan Allen this week, especially with Mike Williams out. He gets a boost. He's definitely making my cash lineup. Now, Hodgins, James, and Slayton are all in play in this matchup. So Hodgins, Richie James are $20, and Darius Slayton is $17. They're all projected quite well. And the last time these New York and Minnesota played, all three of these wide receivers produced. So Minnesota, as we've mentioned, they give up over 7 points above average to the wide receiver position. And I like Hodgins the best because he has 4 touchdowns in the last 5 games. But I think in tournaments, really, you need to get exposure to Hodgins, James, and Slayton. I like Hodgins the most in cash. But yeah, all three are great plays. Now, Zay Jones, second highest fantasy points per dollar play this week at wide receiver. And, there's a lot of validity to it because this is the second highest projected game total, and he has already done well over the entire year. Lawrence loves to target him, but he's also scored over 19 points when they played him, the Chargers, in week 3. So tight ends, there's really just one punt option, and then there's, a few good tight ends, and then a couple in really good spots and, good price. So the Giants, they're not great at covering tight ends. They give 2 points above average to the tight end position. And Hawkinson's already scorched them just a few weeks ago, 29 points. So he got a ton of receptions too. Wow, that game was just crazy. 13 receptions and 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's in, I do think Justin Jefferson is going to be the chalk, so I love Hawkinson. Probably be some leverage off of him. Another team not very good against the tight end position is Miami, 2.8 points above average. Knox produced 18 points in the last meeting, so for him at this price, $19, if he was to produce what he did last time, not necessarily going to happen. But if he did, that's really a bargain at $19. So that said, Knox, very hit or miss. I do prefer Knox in Allen tournament stacks more so. K-Dot top fantasy points per dollar play on the slate. And again, I do love to punt the tight end position. He gets a lot of targets for being $10. I love it. So another punt, defense, Bengals. They get Tyler Huntley, maybe Anthony Brown. I don't know. We'll see. It's kind of a set it and forget it spot for me. Use the salary savings throughout the rest of your roster at $10. So moving along to tournament plays. Now, as I mentioned before, if they're listed in cash, they're definitely tournament viable as well. But when I look at GPP players, I tend to focus on players who have more variance from week to week to, our cash players are kind of going to be our core players, so they can certainly be in your tournament lineup. But we also want to sprinkle in players that have a lot of variance from week to week, but do have that ability, specifically if they're in a good matchup, to where they can really pop off and exceed projections by a lot and reduce the ceiling outcome needed to take down a large field GPP. Specifically studs who can, even if the matchup isn't great, you get them at low owned, they're a stud. They can overcome, tough matchups. So that said, Joe Burrow, he has the potential to be top scoring QB on any slate. We've seen time and time again, so many GPP wins with Burrow in the lineup, even last week. So this game total is low. However, for me, doing Burrow stacks, you don't need to bring it back with any Baltimore players. Boyd, Higgins, and Hurst are cheap options that you can double stack with Chase, of course. And the thing I would say about Higgins is I'll kind of get to is normally I got Higgins here at $17. When Chase is a big game, Higgins normally doesn't, and vice versa. So I'm going to have Higgins in Burrow stacks with Boyd or Hurst, but I'm not going to probably do Higgins and Chase together. He has good leverage off of Chase, and he's half the price. So I like that. Now, Kirk Cousins, and, this is kind of one of those Yahoo-specific plays because Kirk Cousins is more expensive than Daniel Jones on most other sites. On Yahoo, Kirk Cousins is cheaper than Daniel Jones. So I like to see that. And, if this is a game environment that you like, I love that is getting different. So Minnesota's defense, they make it to where they need to continue to score to win. And that's kind of game environment we want for sacks. Again, we've seen them win a lot of shootouts this year. They were down 33 points to Indy and came back and won. So their defense obviously creates opportunities for their offense needing to win shootouts. And Cousins, you can stack him with Jefferson, Hawkinson, and Osborne. Now, Trevor Lawrence, he's really cheap, and I love him on Yahoo this week. $24, one of the top fantasy points per dollar play. And he has that kind of a variance that we want to embrace in tournaments. He could score 3 to 4 touchdowns. And if he scores 25 points, really, which we've seen multiple times, he'll probably be the nuts QB at $24. He can be stacked with Kirk, Zay, and Ingram, of course. To a lesser degree, you could stack him with ETN. But, unless you're really doing just kind of an on-slot stack, not too excited about that. Now, Eckler for me, even better play today now that Mike Williams is out. So I feel like everyone else gets a bump in the offense with Mike Williams out. So Eckler, great play in all formats. I especially like him in tournaments where I can use him as a bring back in cheap Trevor Lawrence stacks. So if I could stack, Lawrence and Kirk and Zay Jones or Ingram and, bring it back with Eckler, I love that. A couple, I know we're on running backs, but before I lose my train of thought, a couple guys that I am now more interested in that Mike Williams is out. Josh Palmer, $15. He's had some good games with Mike Williams out, so definitely got to get some GPP mix to him. And then also DeAndre Carter, he's only $10. So those are a couple guys, GPP only plays for sure. Now, Dalvin Cook, haven't had a big ceiling game from Cook this year, But if Jefferson does fail this week, Cook having a good game is in the realm of possibility. So if I'm playing Cook, I'm fading the Vikings pass game entirely. So Joe Mixon, he will either crash your lineup or win you a GPP. He's worth exposure based on his upside. That's just how he is. Miami, they had a plan for Diggs this year. He did not exceed 11 points in 2 meetings. He's still a stud and primary stacking option with Josh Allen. Gabe Davis continues to be one of the league leaders in average depth of target, and yet he doesn't hit on his opportunities. However, we do remember that game last year versus Kansas City, what he's capable of. And he does have one big game this year. So he's a GPP only play in Allen double stacks. T. Higgins, again, Chase has a big game. Higgins normally doesn't. So when Chase doesn't have a big game, Higgins can. We like him. Boyd, Tyler Boyd will go off for 20 to 25 points every once in a while. And his $14 salary, that's the type of ceiling that you need from a low salary player to have tournament winning upside. I do like Boyd and Burrow double stacks. And then Christian Kirk, prime stacking piece with Trevor Lawrence, 9 weeks with double-digit points, and he will really pop off for 20 to 30 points every now and then. So I like that. And then the last play for me, KJ Osborne has averaged 7.6 targets over the last 5 games. In this game environment, he's a nice stacking option with Cousins as a way to get different in salary. So I think that's going to do it. If you like this kind of content, please hit that notification button so you never miss an episode. And, like, comment, subscribe, share, do all the things. We appreciate that. Best of luck this week. And, of course, we will see you next week for the divisional round. It goes on and on. So good luck.